Hello and welcome to episode 2020 of Creative
Woo!
Collaboration Conversations with Veronica and Jillian. And I'm Jillian.
And I'm Veronica, and welcome to a round number 20.
20. Imagine that.
I love it. I love it. I
Hmm.
remember last episode we were like 19, almost 20, and now it's actually 20. I'm very excited.
Me
New
too.
year, round number. What can be better than that?
Right, right. So today we're going to chat about our goals for the new year. But before we do, let's do our little check-in. How's it going? What's new? Any new things, experiences, ideas, tools, events? I don't know, daydreams,
Mm.
recipes, any updates?
Oh, so many and nothing, nothing to pop up. I think
Mm,
this time of the year is it's at least for me the moment to slow down and just take it a little bit
mm,
easier and just enjoying the people around me and just follow I don't know, follow your whatever your heart. If you want to just not
mm,
do anything, not do anything. And I think it's
mm-hmm,
important to have this slow down moment. And we did talk about this last episode as well. For me personally, it's very important to also slow down because you're not able to create if you're not taking your time to rest and to
mm-hmm.
get inspired and be creative again. So for me, it's more a lot of just slowing down and enjoying the moment and the small things, being that a cup of tea.
It's like hibernating a little bit.
Actually, that's the right word. Yes.
Yeah,
Hibernation. I
yeah.
love that. How about you?
So for me, I think funny how time works, right? Because as we're recording this, I can say, well, we're preparing to head to Mexico for the holidays. But by the time this episode is live, we'll be returning or just returned or somewhere in there. So yeah, so I think my end of the year is tricky. I like to spend December reviewing a lot of things, reflecting. Um, but this year is going to be different because we're going to be at my mother-in-law's house. So I hope to still be able to do some of that. But yeah, we'll
Translation,
see
a
how
lot
this
of good
December
food.
goes. Yeah, right. I know. So it's going to be some really amazing food, and then we'll be spending quite a bit of time in the sun as much as possible. Kind of stock up on the vitamin D. Yeah. So yeah. So that's a little bit about my
Now,
check-in update and end of the year kind of plans.
actually, what this time of year makes me dream. So I'm dreaming about my ski holiday, seeing my nephew again, just
Mm,
uh, enjoying life. I
hmm.
think that's the moment. Slow down and
That's
enjoy a little bit.
Well, that could also be a goal for the new year too, is to make sure to kind of proactively schedule in more time to relax, to unplug, to do things that we enjoy. I think that's a really important, I think, ingredient in creating happiness and success, right? Is having the things that fill us up. So I
That's a
feel
good
like,
that's a
yeah.
good point actually. Funny enough, it's I never really took long holidays. I think the
Hmm.
first time I took three weeks off was when I went to the States, and of course you need longer. Like they were
Hmm.
almost 4 weeks, and for me it was like, what am I doing? I'm not gonna work
Yeah.
so long. Like what's
Yeah.
happening? Nothing happened. Nothing bad happened. I had an amazing
Right.
time. My business
Right.
didn't go bankrupt. Everyone was happy.
Hmm.
Um, but the point I want to make, it's a mind shift. Because looking at the Dutch culture, they're very good. They say they're good at balancing. I think they're very good at putting boundaries, saying,
Yes.
I'm not working after this hour, or I'm not doing anything after that. And that really helps them be more present, I
Hmm.
think, or to
Yes.
allocate more time to the things that they like, exactly what you said. I think from my culture and also the American culture is much more work oriented, or okay, Romanians, East European and Balkans, we are more Latin and drama, not the Balkans, but the Romanians, like drama oriented. We need to do that. It has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely that has an influence in how we are setting up goals and taking the time. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
learning how to slow down instead. And that actually, the funny thing is when you slow down, you're not less productive or inefficient. It's the opposite. This is what I'm
Right.
discovering.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
But coming,
interesting.
yeah.
No, I just want to jump in and say one thing because I was like, oh, yeah. So this is the reason we're doing our podcast, because amazing for other people to listen, but for us to be able to chat as well. Yeah, that is something that I'm also thinking about, but it didn't kind of rise to the surface, is kind of reflecting on the US culture that I'm, obviously very familiar with, but then now living here in the Netherlands for almost 3 years and learning a bit about how life is here and how people structure their days and all of the things that you mentioned, is thinking of something like straight away, like very kind of rudimentary or simple, but how many hours do I want to work per
Yes.
day or per week? Like, really, what type of a life do I want to have? And that in and of itself is very complex and scary for me sometimes, because it feels tied to like the big picture in life, and are we always going to stay here, which I hope we do, but because of what we need from life or what we think we need, and it becomes this whole bit. So a simple exercise in what do I want can really kick off a bunch of other kind of related or ancillary questions and whatnot. But I think overall, I think it is kind of important to start with that when establishing goals or anything else. Is, what is it that you want to achieve? Goals for what? Like, what is the ultimate end result you're aspiring to achieve or to experience? So I think that, like, how we work towards that, in what capacity and what duration, etc., is an important component of that.
I like that. And especially for the entrepreneurs, that is our main audience, basically, founders, entrepreneurs, where you don't take out your professional life from you don't really separate the professional life from your personal life, because it's impossible. So that becomes even more important to integrate, like, how many hours do I want? Like, you have a kid, for example. Your kid is very important and requires a lot of your attention. How do you integrate that in your work?
Yep.
And that's one of the things that I love about being an entrepreneur, because I can create my own schedule. So
yes,
I need to take my dog out at lunchtime because my dog needs to go out. So I'm going to make sure I have a break at that point, and no one can actually book a meeting. So it's very important to, how do you balance all of this in a way that works for you? And I think that could be a nice segue to the goals, because that should be translated in the goals. And everyone knows, like, from my methodology, setting up goals for your company, and I think that applies here. It's one of the steps. It's actually the third step of the methodology. And I do like to have the bigger picture, and then I strongly believe you need to start breaking it down in smaller pieces. And why do I strongly believe that? Is otherwise you're not going to achieve it. You're going to set it up like the New Year resolutions, when everyone is saying, I'm going to drink less, I'm going to exercise more, I'm going to eat healthier, I'm going to travel more, or be more eco-friendly, or whatever. Like, you have amazing goals, some realistic, some not. But the problem happens, December comes, outside is cold and wet and depressing, and everybody stops doing everything.
yeah.
So how do you prevent that? And I think that applies for in all cases. You actually make them very accessible to you, and you start making them habits instead of something I need to do. They need to become integrated part of your daily activity. And that can be for your business, like you mentioned in the last episode, writing more. So if your goal is to be more visible, that means you need to go to more conferences, speak at events, write, have social media posts. So start breaking down that per week and per day, and it becomes a norm. Like, you are waking up and having your coffee, right? You do it without thinking. How about if you do that with I need to write a social media post. Of course, you're going to think about
Hmm.
what you're writing, but it becomes second nature.
Habitual. Yeah. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, exactly what you said, creating that habit and creating as part of our ethos. And I feel like a tangible step to take to help achieve that is to have those things scheduled,
Yes.
and knowing what they are and scheduling specific things. So, yeah, so I set up my calendar that way. So I have the biggest kind of blocks of like all the things and what block they're organized in. They're like color coded and whatnot. And I know how many hours a week I'm allocating to each thing. But I schedule all of the things, including time to think and time to create and all of that, to try to keep a handle on how I'm spending my time and ultimately trying to become more and more efficient and productive with the time that I am spending working. Um, anyhow,
I, I like that approach, but I do want to make to make a small point here for the listeners that I try that. For example, I'm scheduling a lot of things, but not everything, and I try scheduling thinking time, and it
mm,
didn't work for me. It was actually so demotivating with my
mm,
personality and way of being, because for me
interesting.
to think, I need to be in a specific state of mind. Like if I'm tired or if my mind is on something else, a client, or I don't know, it I will not be able to stop everything and start thinking about business strategy or whatever is scheduled for that thinking moment.
Mm, mm,
So how I see it is more like set up the non-negotiables and then be flexible with those things. That doesn't mean you don't need to do them. It's very important. That's not the point I want to make. But the point I want to make is think about your personality and do them. Like, for example, the best way for me to think and to come up with things is either walking or cleaning my house, because then I focus on something else and that takes the pressure out. And then
mm,
my mind is relaxed and I will start thinking without really
mm,
putting pressure on me to think. Make sense?
mm.
So,
Yeah.
and some people are like showering or whatever. It's very personal. I'm not saying that start cleaning your house, maybe could
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
but everyone is different. And
Yeah.
what I want to do is don't stress yourself to do specific things, because then you're going to go to the opposite. Instead of being efficient and being having a schedule and working towards your goal, you're going to freeze. And I saw
Hmm.
that with a lot of people. That's
Mm.
the point I want to
It's
make,
interesting.
actually.
Yeah, yeah. So I think of it as like structured and unstructured thinking time, right? So the unstructured thinking time for me is when I'm at the gym, right? And the way I get myself to the gym is knowing that I'll get to listen to podcasts, because the rest of my day in life it's harder to have the time to do that. So if I go to the gym, I can be exercising and listen to podcasts. And when I'm doing that, it's giving me like a whole frenzy of ideas and all of these things. So I'm exercising and taking notes and whatnot. So that's like unstructured. Um, excuse me. The structured time is how I organize my calendar, based on specific things that I want to think through, and so I will set it up and include the links that I come across. So if I'm working on like ways to excuse me, structure a team, for example, like all the different articles and things, because I read a lot. So all the things that I see that are related to it, I will grab all of those links and put them into a document, so that when that time comes up to schedule, I'll like look through those links and it'll get me right back on focus for that specific thing. So that's how, because I agree to just be like, okay, now it's time to think about, it's like, it's hard to
It's
just do that. It's like
impossible.
dance. Yeah, it's hard. So that's how I set it up. So and it also it gives me a place, because I'm reviewing so much content all the time, and a lot of it is really interesting. But I can't just stop and read all of these articles right now, because I've got other things I need to get done. So then I can take those and put those in their places, and then I already know I'll come back to them and read them when it's the time. But anyway, so that's why I structure that. But anyway, goals for 2024. My first goal is to learn to speak Dutch. How about that? Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel I should
So
have that goal as well.
it's like very, very intimidating. So I'm going to an immersion training in February, and we'll see how it goes. So that's a really big one for me personally and professionally. So yeah, that's number one on my list. So it's very scary and overwhelming. And yeah, so that's my first one.
Oh, I
Yeah,
feel I
so
need
there's
to
that. Yeah.
add that one to my list, but I must admit it's a little bit lower. My biggest goal is actually to launch the marketing accelerator in Q1 of next year.
Mm,
And it's
mm,
on my mind for a long time, and now I feel I'm ready for it. And
mm.
I have, the pieces of the puzzle start falling into the right spot.
It's great.
So
Yeah. So
that's my
when
big
when
one.
it's ready, then we can have an episode. You could introduce it or acknowledge, hey, we can celebrate it like it's going live. It's a big one. That's great. That's what's nice about
And
having this chat now. Yeah.
relaunching base conference.
Hmm.
That will be the second one. Actually, there are quite a lot now that I think about it. ONS, we have the right format. Now we are going ahead with it and keep on increasing the number of people. And I do enjoy that one.
Mm.
These are the biggest ones at this point.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Another one for me is a little bit, it's quantifiable and not, but anyway, it is what it is. So I guess it is largely, it could be, but in any case, so another goal of mine is to continue building momentum and what I've started to put into place over the course of this year. So building on the momentum, continuing to build relationships, and kind of new learning and insights and connecting dots, is an important kind of momentum to continue as well as collaborations and opportunities, continuing to build those. And what you were just alluding to is moving into the thought leadership space, which requires consistent quality content publishing. So really working to capitalize the C on consistent and the Q on quality. So working on those. And I would say another really big goal for me next year, it's like, I can't believe this, but is to return to the stage, right? I used to do a lot of public speaking. The last time I did, it was Q4. I had seven speaking engagements in Q4. And next year will be 10 years since, like, 10 years has evaporated. So it was
Time
2014.
to go back.
Yeah.
Time to go back.
So it's time
Can
to
you
do that
imagine how
again.
much knowledge you acquired in those 10 years? So how many things
It's
you
like,
need to share and you have
geez.
to share.
Yeah, so I'm working on exactly that and what I want to speak about and where do I want to speak, etc. So that's some of the particulars with this kind of high level goal I'm just sharing. But yeah, so I'm actively working on that.
I do want to
Another
jump.
piece. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned something at the
Mm,
beginning, and I will forget it. And I think it's important for our listeners because you said you want to. Um, um, I'm starting to forget it. But
it's okay.
at the beginning, you said you want to focus on the connections, to keep on building connections and having those
Yep.
conversations. And I think that's very important because when we set up
Mm,
goals, we are focusing more like the conference or like the big goals. But I love the fact
mm,
that you brought up the building relationship that is very important to us, and that's the way
mm-hmm.
we run the everything. And I'm looking at the normal people. I don't know, not at us, but the more beginners in terms of business development. They are not focusing on building relationships. They're actually
Right.
focusing on publishing or things that we just shared. But I
Yep.
do want to invite them actually to make that as a goal and to actually say, I want to speak with 10 new people this week. Like to make it very concrete, like the SMART method, right? And if you don't know that, go to the spinideas.nl website. I actually have a form how to set up goals according to the SMART methodology for free. Download it and apply it. Because that's very important. Building relationship sounds hard to quantify, as you said,
Mm-hmm.
but actually
Mm-hmm.
is not. Can be very practical. And
Mm-hmm.
building the way you build it depends from person to person, and of course can take longer. But the first step and the second step, they're very clear. And you can actually
Mm-hmm.
make it just reach out to that person. follow up, go to a coffee with that person. That's the way you do it. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
I had to
No,
interrupt and to do that because it's
I'm
very
glad you
important,
did.
and I see people are not doing it, and
I
it's
agree. I think it is very important. I think
missed
it's
opportunity.
easy. It is a missed opportunity. I feel like any person we meet has the potential to change our life or business, and we have the same opportunity to change their life or business.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's just a matter of timing and whatnot. So we have to continue. So when we meet people, like it's so maybe a very simple or maybe played out analogy, but for me, it's like so accurate that the way I see is every new relationship, every new person I meet is a new seed that I'm planting. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not like this is not like Jack and the Beanstalk seeds that you just plant them and they grow. It's like we have to continue to
Water
nurture them, and
them.
some of them
Exactly.
grow faster than others. But so therefore, moving forward, it's like continuing to nurture those relationships and those referrals, and then adding it, because after you start to do that, you start to have a compounding effect that happens. So one of the go back to my like kind of data mind and KPIs and numbers and things, and like my super nerding out, I also pay attention to like the layers deep, like how many concentric circles with relationships I go, right? So what I mean
Mm-hmm.
by that is if I get one person, refers me to somebody else, and then they refer me and they refer me. So I look at how many layers deep I can go, and that goes back to it really compounds that one initial relationship that then sent that first referral and all the way through. So I often will go 6 to 8 to 10 layers deep on new relationships. And the more I do that, then I can go back down the line and say, oh, thank you. I also met, and then connect those people as
Express. Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I like that you brought that up and kind of highlighted that, because I feel like, yeah, we could do a whole, like, yeah, a whole thing on
I think we
just
need
this.
another episode only about that, actually. So,
Yeah, I think
listeners,
it's key.
to our listeners, if that will be of interest to you, and you maybe they actually are more knowledgeable than we think, and they know how to
Mm,
approach it. But if you think that will be something of interest, let us know in the reach out to us, and
yeah.
we're gonna make it happen. We can share our experience and how we approach it and what is happening. And we
Mm,
do have, I think, halfway we are similar, but half of our approach is different when it comes to that. So
yes.
it will be interesting to actually share and see
Yes.
how we can do it.
Yes. We had our episode on the tactics,
Yeah,
networking
the
tactics.
networking tactics.
Yeah, it was episode 12. So we did that, but this is a little bit perhaps even going more granular. We could do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, anyway. So actually that's related in part to a couple of other goals I have for 2024. So again, for some people it's very simple. For me, it's been quite a journey, but to actually relaunch my newsletter, yep, here I am years later, finally getting it together. So have my newsletter coming back out through the jilliangroup.com. And another really big one I've also been working on for quite some time, I think you also know about this, is launching my own podcast. So
Yes.
that will be, I'm I'm hoping for Q1, but it's probably going to be early Q2. So that will be coming up. And also another thing that's, anyways, the past doesn't matter. Moving forward, is launching a new workshop series. So that will be coming out too, and that relates to the other things that we've talked about. Yeah, all the other things we said. And
Exciting year
then
for you,
yeah,
Jillian.
so it's a busy year. And then the last two little blips also. So onboarding, it's already started, but I want to complete next year. Onboarding my first two partners. One is in Mexico and one is in Boston. So growing through partnership development. So I've got my first two partners. So onboarding them, as well as onboarding 6 new clients is where I'm looking now. So that
Congratulations.
is my
Exciting.
plan for 2024 in a nutshell.
Well, you are much more advanced than I am because I'm still I'm gonna set up the goals in January this year. I
Mm,
know I should have
mm-hmm,
done it in December, but as said, I'm slowing down now. I do have the big ones that I said, Because for me, this episode was more not necessarily sharing my goals, but inviting people to sit down and do them and to show them um, a different approach to setting up goals. Or actually, not necessarily a different one, but really, I love the fact that you said I want 6 clients, I want 2 partners. So that
Mm,
is very important for me. And again, I mentioned the SMART methodology because what you keep on hearing is, I want more clients. And I said, yeah, that's
mm,
very nice. Everybody wants more clients. But what does that mean? How many clients are you actually able to take on board and do quality
mhm,
work? What's the
mhm,
capacity you have? How much time does a client require from you? How much time do you need for the normal running of the business? How much time do you need for actually going and prospecting? How much time do you need for your own marketing? And
yeah,
people forget about that. So a question that I'm asking, or I'm pretty sure you do. So if tomorrow you're gonna have 100 new clients, are you able to actually provide for all of them? And pretty
right.
much, depending on if it's a service based company, they will not be able to do that. So it's very important to be very clear what's your capacity and how many clients do you really need and
And also
can
how to
serve.
structure that though too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how to structure that if you do get an influx of new business opportunities. Like the worst thing is that people feel like, have to do it all right now, when we really don't.
Mhm.
So a lot of it is process and
Exactly.
how to structure things.
Plan.
So there's a lot there. And yeah, it's different for me in this because one of the and this is why I think the conversation about KPIs and metrics and whatnot, there are basic ones that like all businesses should know is like, yeah, what kind of revenue, what's your cost, and then how much does that, what's your commitment to that, like how much time does that take from you, etc. But I really think, like you mentioned earlier about your conversion rates and whatnot, and that's something that is I've never really had to contend with, but I am scared and nervous, but excited to start to step into that because thus far, 100% of my business has just come in to me. So, yeah, so I've closed like just about 100% of the business
Mhm.
opportunities that have come. So this is part of, stepping into a new way of doing business, is being more proactive and going after new business and targeting certain companies and organizations and projects that I want to work on, which means by default, it's not likely that I'm going to close 100% of them or even 90% of them. So, um, yeah, we'll
I
have to
feel you
see.
because I was the same. My conversion rate is around 75-80%.
Yeah.
Um, so I did had the same scare, but what I'm realizing, and we went to a conference together yesterday, and the lady was talking about values and about KPIs and how do you put the
Yeah.
SDGs and align with the communication. And actually, because both of us closing business is basically us speaking with the client and connecting with the client. Bottom line, of course, there it's much more complex, but everything starts with that alignments in our approach
Mm,
and how we can
mm,
help them, right?
mm-hmm.
um, Once that happens, the client is booking. So the reasons for which they are not booking is either we are not aligned and will not be able to work together because we're never going to work, or we're going to work for a couple of months and then we say goodbye because we are not compatible, um, or will be budget or time wise that have an influence and you can't do anything about that. Can be flexible, but if they don't have the money, they don't have the money, and that's it, right? Simple.
Yeah,
So
it could be the money, or it could, yeah, there's a host of, but most of the time we're not going to know what the reason is.
I'm always asking. Actually, what I learned, if it's a no, it's very good to, okay, it's a no, thank you. May I know why? Because that provides me so much information. And it may be maybe something wrong in my approach, or maybe my services are actually not the ones that they need, or maybe I wasn't able to communicate properly, or they didn't understood what I'm offering. So for me, that's a very good opportunity to learn actually when they say no.
Yes, it's a great thing to ask. It doesn't always mean we're going to find out the
Get the
truth.
right. True.
Yeah.
That's very true. Um, I lost my thought.
I don't know. So yeah, goals for 2024. Have some goals.
Have some yes,
Veronica, you mentioned a great resource that we'll also share in the show notes about,
yes.
the SMART goals, and the framework for that is really useful. And you shared some goals for yourself, and we'll circle back to you once you have kind of more concrete goals, and when you're ready to do that, we can circle back. And then I sprinkled a few of mine out here, so we'll see. Feel like, ooh, the pressure's on. It's kind of like when you tell people, oh, I'm going to quit smoking. Now it's like, ooh, now people
Now
know. So now
our
I put
audience
my goals
it's
out
our
there.
accountability group.
Yeah, right.
But the invitation, and I think that will be my main point, and probably the last point of the podcast from me is set up realistic goals and get the big goal and then split it on smaller bites. Insert that in your agenda, as we said, so they will become a normal part of your routine or of your weekly routine. And just go for it.
That's it. Just go for it.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be the title for it.
That's not a bad one.
Yeah. All right. So this is a wrap on episode 20. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. And thank you for sticking with us for 20 episodes.
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers.